Assassin's Creed Shadows is the newest mainline game in the Assassin's Creed franchise, and as one of my favorite video game series, I wanted to look back and finally and definitively rank every game in the franchise, or at least the ones I've personally played, which luckily is like 98% of them. So let's get started. Assassin's Creed Chronicles. The trio of side-scrolling adventure games are set across three time periods: 16th century Imperial China, 19th century India during the Anglo-Sino-Sikh Wars, and the early 20th century Soviet Russia, just after 1917's October Revolution. Played out as 2.5D side-scrolling games with levels, each hero has a unique, tools at their disposal to progress through the levels. The replayability is high to try and complete all the challenges for every level, but the checkpoint system can be a bit unforgiving, and some game stories are better than others, like with China and Xiaojun, who, if you remember from the amazing conclusion to Ezio's story, reprises her role, from the animated movie Embers. All in all, not a bad way to spend your time, but definitely the least memorable for me personally. Assassin's Creed Bloodlines. Essentially Assassin's Creed 1, but for the PSP, playing almost identically, albeit with, smaller cities to compensate for the hardware. The game continues Altair's story a few months after the end of Assassin's Creed 1. Story missions and assassinations were, simplified and straightforward. As a replacement for eavesdropping and pickpocketing, missions are structured similarly to what Assassin's Creed 2 would do, with Altair handling he's handling one task after another, and slowly gathering vital information from both his allies and enemies as each mission is completed. It also expands on the relationship between Altair and Maria, the woman he spared in the first game, who would eventually be his wife and lifelong partner, as revealed in future games. All in all, a pretty good game, if only held back by the hardware and the outdated controls of the original Assassin's Creed, and the fact that the PSP only has one control nub, so turning the camera, you're using the face buttons. Assassin's Creed Freedom Cry. Originally released as a DLC for Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag, this stars Adewale, Edward's first mate from the main game. Story is simple enough. Adewale finds himself shipwrecked and comes face to face with some of the most brutal slavery practices in the West Indies. The story has you going around, freeing slaves, which also is the newest gameplay mechanic as well, as each freed slave serves as a resource for the player to accumulate in order to unlock upgrades for, your weapons and equipment for, your base of operations. All in all, a good expansion, and it dives deeper into the character of Adewale, one of the best characters from Black Flag. Assassin's Creed 3 Liberation. The first Assassin's Creed game developed for the PS Vita, and the first game to feature a female protagonist, Aveline, as she fights the Templars' attempts to gain control of New Orleans following the end of the French and Indian War. If you played Assassin's Creed 3, you know what you're getting, just a smaller version of it. What was introduced this time was the social stealth elements. New gameplay mechanics exclusive to Liberation, including the chain kill ability, which allows Aveline to chain attacks together to kill multiple enemies at once. A trade system in which Aveline manages her father's trade network by purchasing goods and selling them to other cities, via ship, and the ability to switch between Aveline's three distinct personas, each providing its own advantages and disadvantages. For example, the assassin persona performs better in combat, but is very quickly detected by enemies. The slave persona can blend in, with other slaves, or carry crates to pass by suspicious enemies, but has access to fewer weapons. And the lady persona can charm or bribe guards to enter restricted areas and is detected slower than the other personas, but cannot free run. All in all, an okay game. I just wish the story and the Templar villains were a bit better, but New Orleans and the one mission, sequence that you can spend in Mexico were very interesting settings for the series. Assassin's Creed Rogue. Now, this is a game that I feel gets a bit too much hate. This was the transitional game Ubisoft made just in case fans didn't upgrade to the newer PS4 and Xbox One consoles yet for Unity. Rogue takes the gameplay from Assassin's Creed 4, including the naval aspects, and moves them up to the North Atlantic. The biggest issue people had with this game was the incredibly short length of the story with only 6 main sequences to go through, and the fact that this, even though it's the first time you get to experience the Templar side of the story with Shay, they essentially just made the assassins to be big dum-dums with horrible writing and making the Templars as these patron saints who could do no wrong. hate them showing up again is always welcome, as arguably one of, if not the best written character in the franchise. There's a few gameplay mechanics like the grenade launcher and the assassin's dens you have to take out, which kind of make a comeback in Syndicate with the Templar dens. A game that, if there was more time in the oven, could have been the first of many games with the Templar perspective, as I've been begging for like a Templar Creed series forever now. Assassin's Creed 1. I love Altair and the first game. It holds a very special place in my heart, which is why it's still kind of ranked middle of the road, but the main gameplay loop is just so outdated now. There's only so many times you can go to a new city, pickpocket someone, beat up someone, tail someone, and then do your assassination before you do it all over again, like 9 times. You can see the breadcrumbs of greatness this series could eventually achieve with the counter combat, the historical settings, and the fascinating concept behind the animus and the bleeding effect. Assassin's Creed Valhalla. 230 hours later, 100%ing every single thing and getting every single trophy, this is a game I will never pick up and play again. And believe me, I've tried. What kills this game for me is its extremely uninteresting setting of 9th century England. It's mostly just open land of nothingness, with barely any cities of note to explore. Eivor, while greatly voice acted and having some decent story connections to, the Isus and the Sage storylines in previous games, you never really seem to care about anyone, as the story can be told in any order, as you pick and choose which region and questline to follow, which all amount to the same thing in the end. You do favors for the leader of the region until you form an alliance. Rinse and repeat until the end. And don't even get me started on all the Odin stuff and the extra mythic, the mythical expansions this game provides. It's enough to make your head spin. The game also probably has the worst stealth in the series and has almost nothing to do with assassins or Templars. It's basically a Viking game that capitalized on their popularity when a lot of the media at the time was airing about them. Side quests and cutscenes are also a huge step down from Origins and Odyssey, and this is, in my opinion, the worst of the RPG, trilogy. Assassin's Creed Shadows. This game should have been the easiest slam dunk in the franchise's history, a game's setting fans have been asking for about a decade, and it finally comes out to just being, kind of okay. I already talked about how the voice acting and facial expressions might be like the bottom of the barrel for the series for me, and we really never get to explore the friendship between Naue and Yasuke, as the story is essentially told out of order. I had the credits pop before I even finished the game when I completed Naue's personal quest line. I was stunned. I had the epilogue trophy, and I was like, okay, but this other trophy didn't pop. I don't know what was happening. Now, if you thought this was a game about assassins and Templars, you'd be wrong. It isn't until the last 2 hours with Yasuke's and Naue's personal quest line. Now, this is definitely a step up in terms of stealth, combat, side quests, and a beautiful open world compared to Valhalla, but the uninteresting storyline and wasted potential of Naue and Yasuke puts this game, just a step up from Valhalla. Also, removing the ability to climb anything really annoyed me, and I had to Skyrim horse my way around and up some mountains to avoid, going all the way around. It was such a dumb idea to remove that feature in an open world from Origins and Odyssey when, with this big of a game, with this many mountains and, cliff sides in your way. And once again, the modern day storyline takes a huge back seat as it's almost non-existent. So no information on Basim and how he's handling the modern day. 1 step forward and 2 steps back again for Ubisoft. Assassin's Creed Mirage. I'm gonna be honest, I usually hate prequels and telling the beginning to stories of an end we already know. So when I heard the DLC that expanded to a full game with Mirage was going to feature the beginnings of Basim and his story and how it transpired in Valhalla, didn't really interest me. However, seeing the tragic fall of a good person like Basim finally regain his memories of being Loki and completely snuff out all that was once good with him was interesting enough to keep me entertained. Also, I love anything Shoreag-Lu. Sorry if I butchered your name. I love everything she is in. She's great here as Basim's mentor and makes a return from her one mission in Valhalla. The gameplay sees a return to a focus on, more stealth with abilities and tools to help you along. The combat is hit or miss, but if you play your cards right, you won't have to do it as often, and it's pretty bare bones anyways. The city of Baghdad is beautiful, with buildings everywhere, and you can probably go from one end of the city to the other end of the city and never touch the ground. This is essentially what I would figure an Assassin's Creed 1 remake would kind of play like. You find out information about your target, and then move in and go for the kill. We also have optional contracts that have optional objectives, harkening back to the old days, like don't kill anyone but the main target, or don't be seen. And it was challenging going for a few of them. All in all, I prefer this game to Valhalla, as it's a much shorter runtime of like 25 hours, or so long it took me to get the Platinum Trophy. I think that's the perfect length for like one of these smaller Assassin's Creed games. Assassin's Creed Syndicate. This is sort of a bittersweet one for me. When this game was originally announced, it was known as Assassin's Creed Victory, and it was going to feature a single protagonist in a much darker London with a more grounded story. Instead, it changed, in development, and London became this bright and happy place, and we got the Fry twins as protagonists. Maybe the most unlikable protagonist in the series. Man, are they mad annoying. I know they're supposed to be, mad young, but it's just grating to have to spend the entire game with these two. Now, the parkour is still relatively the same from Unity, but it just doesn't feel as smooth, if that makes sense. But the combat was improved with one hell of a combo system, while still keeping the typical attack, stun, and dodge mechanics. Now, this is the first time we also have two protagonists, Jacob and Evie. Jacob with more of the brawling skills, and Evie with more of the stealth skills, though both are still relatively the same in the grand scale of things. The rope launcher was introduced because, let's be honest, climbing up Big Ben and some of these massive London buildings would take forever without it. And, in a way, it's a double-edged sword, as it trivializes like one half of what makes Assassin's Creed, Assassin's Creed. There's also horse carriage races and building up your own gang on a train, and then they can help out in the open world. All in all, not that bad of a game, but nowhere near the top of where some fans would place it. Assassin's Creed Unity. Oh, Unity, there is so much to love and so much not to love, all wrapped up in one. This game at launch was so bug-filled and poorly received that it forever changed the future of the franchise. Love it or hate it, that's impressive. To this day, still one of the most graphically impressive games for the series, boasting the largest population density that we've seen, and also the best parkour the franchise has seen. Seriously, it feels like Ubisoft went backwards with every subsequent release and just gave up altogether on parkour. This definitely needs a 60 frames per second patch like Syndicate just recently got, but I'm trailing off. While the combat was a little weird, stealth was as good as ever and featured some of the best assassination missions in the series, where you could create your own opportunities to tackle the mission how you want with as much or little help as needed. Also the first to have a multiplayer co-op mode that was surprisingly fun. My only two real complaints in this game are as follows. Holy crap, look at this collectibles map. I mean, whoever thought this many things in this small of a little thing was insane. And whoever thought putting them all on a single map should have their head examined. And two, I just don't care about the story. While it is a return to form showcasing the Assassin's Brotherhood and the Templars, it was just hard to get attached to anyone. And the fact that everyone is speaking in a British accent in France kind of throws me off. All in all, a pretty good game, just held back by a subpar story and a ton of technical problems, especially at launch. Assassin's Creed Nexus VR. This is a game I'd imagine not many hardcore Assassin's Creed fans have played, as it's a MetaQuest VR exclusive. MetaQuest 2 and 3, I think it's one of those exclusive. I have the MetaQuest 3. But I bought the MetaQuest 3 specifically for this game, and let me tell you, I was not disappointed. This is exactly what you would probably ever want in a VR Assassin's Creed game. Essentially, a first-person game played from the perspectives of Ezio, Connor, and Cassandra. The parkour is great and fluid, and the stealth is surprisingly good. Pulling the bow and arrow off your back and shooting it, everything is working as intended. It's great. You have to play it to experience it. I can't really say it in words. The only issue is the combat is just kind of okay. The combat, and all that. But overall, if you had any interest in VR at all, and you love Assassin's Creed, the stories told here fit perfectly with the characters and the games that they're from. Assassin's Creed Odyssey. The second game in the RPG trilogy of Assassin's Creed games, and chronologically the first game in the timeline. Confusing, I know, with a game called Origins, also in the series, but oh well. Set in ancient Greece around 400 BC, you play as Alexios or Cassandra, a mercenary caught up in a war between Athens and Sparta, and you end up traveling some of the world's most iconic landmarks. This game really put the role-playing aspect in the RPG, because you now have like dialogue options, romance options, and all manner of choices to make that influence the side quest as well as the main story. Gameplay-wise, very similar to Origins, but with the added bonus of fully bringing back the naval combat from Black Flag, but replacing cannons, with bows and arrows and spears. There's more loot than you know what to do with, and the customization for your character and ship is off the charts. Stealth takes a back seat here, not as bad as Valhalla, but it's still more action-focused, but the beautiful scenery of ancient Greece is breathtaking to travel through, and you can get lost just exploring how amazing it looks. Now, the Assassins and Templars don't really make an appearance here per se. However, if Origins was the origins of the Assassin's Brotherhood with the hidden ones, then the order you fight in this game is the origins of the Templar Order. This is a massive game, one where if you want to see everything, especially all the islands and all the expansions, you'll be here well over 100, 150, 200 hours. But it's well worth it. It's over Valhalla, it's well worth it. Assassin's Creed Revelations. The end of the Ezio trilogy, the first game that felt kinda rushed in my opinion, as the yearly release was still in full swing back then. We once again follow Ezio, now an old man in his 50s trying to find 5 keys left behind by Altair to open his library. The setting now is in Constantinople, known today as Istanbul. Now in Constantinople, Ezio becomes caught in a war of succession for the Ottoman throne and must unveil a conspiracy by the Byzantine Templars, who are attempting to reclaim control of the city and acquire the same keys to Altair's library themselves. Gameplay-wise, it's mostly the same as Brotherhood, but with a few added mechanics. The bomb and crafting system really opens up here. Instead of just smoke bombs, we have a huge arsenal of different types now, and even a new tower defense game mode, and a hook blade, which allows Ezio to climb even higher with his jumps, or to travel across the city faster with like zip lines. There's also even an optional puzzle block kind of game where you can control Desmond in a first-person perspective in the Animus as we learn more about his past. Ezio also finally gets his happy ending in love after the heartbreak from Christina, his first love's death. This also has my favorite scene in the entire franchise between Ezio and Altair. It's absolute cinema. Assassin's Creed 3. This was the game back in 2012. The advertisements and marketing for it were crazy. That whole "I'm coming home" trailer, display, up all over Times Square. What a time to be alive. The American Revolution. What an amazing setting for Assassin's Creed, with Boston, New York, and the frontier. Players take on the mantle of Connor as a half-English, half-Mohawk character navigating colonial America. Now, the biggest problem people had with this game, well, two, is the very, very long tutorial, almost half the game at around 5 or 6 sequences, and Connor just had very big shoes to fill coming off the heels of the Ezio trilogy. Problem was, he was just too stoic for most fans after the charismatic Ezio, and a lot of fans never grew attached to him. Now, the long prologue you get to play as someone other than Connor, Haytham, one of the best characters in the franchise and father to Connor. The game also finally introduced a new engine to the series, so this was the beginning of not just a new protagonist, but an entirely new gameplay mechanics. With the new Anvil engine, the graphics really got an upgrade, while the American frontier was a wonderful change from like the largely, European settings of the previous games that pushed the limits of the open world franchise even further, with an increase in the use of natural foliage for sneaking and hiding rather than the largely urban structures you've grown used to. Think of it as like the switch from like Metal Gear Solid 1 and 2 to Metal Gear Solid 3. So, the game also introduced naval commissions for the first time, and I'm gonna be honest, I kind of feel like I like them a little bit more than 4. Even though the game, that game gets all the credit, it began here. Connor is also the strongest and most brutal assassin we have. The combat system might still be my favorite in the series, if still a bit simple with how powerful Connor, the counterattacks are. This game gets a lot of hate and is usually really low on most people's list, but I'm a contrarian with my opinion. An overall great game, but sadly the fall of the modern day story with the demise of Desmond. Modern day just has not been the same since his absence. Assassin's Creed 4, Black Flag. Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag. Yes, This is not an Assassin's Creed game, despite what the title and everyone else tells you. This is a pirates game, through and through. As the charismatic Edward Kenway, eventual father to Haytham and grandfather to Connor, we go through his life of self-discovery of what truly matters in life and how gold, wealth, and status does not make up for friends and loved ones. While there is still cities to climb and enemies to tail, my god, there are many tailing missions on land and sea. It's actually kind of ridiculous. I'm hoping the remake fixes this. You will spend much of your time out at sea with your ship, the Jackdaw, sailing from small island to small island. Listening to your crew sing sea shanties is something that will never get old. Ubisoft essentially took the naval combat missions from Assassin's Creed 3 and turned them into one amazing game. So amazing that the very first remake supposedly coming this year, if rumors are true, to be believed a Black Flag remake. This should be a slam dunk for Ubisoft that they desperately need right now, and a Black Flag remake might be the easiest one of them all. They can't possibly mess this up, right? Assassin's Creed Brotherhood. Ezio was so damn popular, we couldn't just have one game with him, right? Nope, the second game of his legendary trilogy is Brotherhood, and the main new gameplay mechanic is revealed in that title. The name Brotherhood reveals this game's main selling point, the ability to recruit other assassins and send them on missions to further the assassin's cause, or summon them into battle to fight alongside you. Brotherhood also introduced the continuous one-hit kill combo chain after performing a counter, and it truly made Ezio a bona fide badass to chain together so many kills so quickly. Gone are the varied locations like Venice and Florence and Tuscany. Brotherhood is all about Rome, baby, and Rome is beautiful. We even get to experience a bit more modern day sections with Desmond, and the story really starts going off the rails by the end. This is also the beginning of Assassin's Creed multiplayer, a mode that would continue for a while and for some reason, even though extremely popular, was only ever used in a few games. Returning characters like Leonardo da Vinci have some amazing missions where you have to destroy his war machines he was forced to build for the Borgia, and the main new mechanic, the Brotherhood, you save an NPC on the streets and recruit them to join your cause. You then train them and send them on missions to bring back gear and money for your journey. It's a mechanic that's been used countless times since, and even if restricted every now and then, this is still one of the best games in the franchise and easily makes top 3 for me. Assassin's Creed Origins. This was the start of something new, and the first time the series missed its yearly release since Assassin's Creed 2 in 2009. A huge departure from everything that came before in the series. Assassin's Creed was going full open world and adopting the Ubisoft open world formula fully, like in so many of their other games. But this time, Ubisoft seemed to perfect it. This game, as its title implies, details the story on how the Assassin's Brotherhood was first started. Playing as a desert nomad Bayek in ancient Egypt, you're on the hunt with your wife Aya for the people responsible for murdering your son. Bayek is one of the best protagonists in the series. The charisma, charm, care, love, anger, all brought to life beautifully by Abubakar Salim. He truly brought this character to life in ways future games hoped they could. The main reason why this game is so high for me is in no small part due to Bayek. The modern day also tried its best to, finally giving us like an actual protagonist for the modern day since Desmond in the form of Layla. Too bad she's insufferable and I absolutely can't stand her. But at least it's better than what we got with like Unity and Syndicate. And now even Shadows. Now, this was the first game that changed up the formula dramatically. No more one-hit assassinations, every section of the map is level-gated to keep you on a specific path until you level up and become stronger to explore those places by doing like side quests and side activities like clearing forts and stuff. While some of the story can be told in a non-linear way with what target you want to assassinate and when, every story tied to your target is written beautifully. I'd argue this was the last great written Assassin's Creed game. If you have a choice of only playing one game from the trilogy, I would recommend this above all of them, even including Shadows. Assassin's Creed 2. Assassin's Creed may be the first game in the series, but this is the game that made it into a blockbuster franchise, and Ubisoft's biggest cash cow in their history of games. Launched 2 years after the first game, it amped up the action and intrigue with a move to the Renaissance Italy and a suave protagonist known as Ezio Auditore da Firenze. This game makes the first game seem like an unfinished demo or some form of proof of concept. The leaps and bounds of improvements from the first game to this sequel is off the charts. Gone were the repetitive mission structure, gone was the lack of cinematic cutscenes, and what was welcomed in its place is still considered the best in the series almost unanimously by fans and critics alike. The combat was improved, the locations were gorgeous, the voice acting was wonderfully cheesy with one of the best, most iconic characters, not only in this franchise but in gaming as a whole. You can swim now, eagle vision can be used in third person, you can hire mercenaries or courtesans to distract guards, you can disarm enemies and use their weapons against them. The gameplay improvements are too many to list. No one knew back then how popular Ezio as a character would be, or how popular and successful the game would be, but it was and still is. Hell, the music by Jesper Kyd is also some of the best in the medium, with Ezio's family theme being so damn good that it's used in every single game now as the Creed's official music. I don't think any game could ever beat Assassin's Creed 2. Nostalgia carries it still pretty high for me, even if mechanically it's not as well tuned as future games. But in 2009, it's still one of the best years in gaming. But this is still a game that holds up even today. With the Black Flag remake well underway, I would eventually kill for an Ezio trilogy remake, after an Assassin's Creed 1 remake, of course. And that is my definitive list of every Assassin's Creed game I have personally played. What's your number one and what's your least favorite in the series? And let me know why down in the comments. Thanks so much for clicking on this video and watching. I know my titles and thumbnails kind of suck. I don't really know what makes a good one and what doesn't, but I'll keep trying. I also finally got a brand new PC, so streaming soon, maybe, if I have the time. Thanks once again for checking this out. It means the world to me, especially if you somehow managed to make it this far into the video. But thank you for watching. I appreciate you. Talk to you next time.